Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Gordon Causey here again, aka Gordy Canuck, one of my usernames. Coming to you live from, not from Ottawa, but from Northumberland County, a couple, 2.5 hours, 200 plus kilometers away from Ottawa. I'm in the eastern end of Ontario. Coming to you live, well, I'm recording this on Saturday early morning, 12:10 a.m. So Friday just ended. The first few minutes of Saturday morning, January 29th, a seminal day coming up. I'm going to be talking to you about the convoy that's arriving, and large numbers have already arrived in Ottawa to protest the mandates. That seems to be the key narrative, is that the protesters are asking for an end to the mandates. The mandates can be the QR code or the Vax Pass or masking rules, distancing rules, forced closure of business. So they want these mandates ended. And that excites me. Anyone who has followed me going back to March of 2020 knows that I've always regarded this as the mandates as being somewhat, not just somewhat, but as being more harmful than COVID. The cure, common refrain is that the cure is worse than the disease. And that's a point of view I've held from day one. Epidemiology, as I understand it, is the science of trying to control infections, trying to control the spread of a disease. And I view it somewhat as the science of herding cats, because trying to micromanage human behavior in an effort to mitigate the spread of an airborne aerosol virus, I just don't think is possible. Viruses spread. One man's opinion. And I know the whole idea, keep everyone apart from each other, you keep the virus from spreading around, because vectors of transmission and such. And it's, I can consider it the epidemiological butterfly effect. One person impacts another person, and then eventually gets into a long care home. Unfortunately, in trying to do that, you're shuttering schools, so you're impacting children, their mental health, their education that's going to go with them for the rest of their lives. When you force a business owner to close a hair salon that they've poured heart and soul into, you take away their livelihood, they can lose their homes, their life savings. Their mental health can be destroyed. There's so many impacts to these measures, and I would argue that for the most, they've been unsuccessful. As 2 years in, we recently have been seeing higher rates of infection and hospitalizations than at any point ever during the pandemic. So there's so many issues to unpack here, but I want to talk about the convoy in Ottawa. And this one man's opinion. I am opposed to the mandates. I believe that each individual should assess their own tolerance for risk, determine what their own risks are. The risks aren't the same for everyone, and should be guided accordingly, like we do with many other things in society. Regardless of that, so I'm in favor of ending the mandates. And so I'm excited that so many people are going to Ottawa. I don't know how many it is. There are all kinds of numbers being punted around, 10,000, 20,000 trucks, 30,000. I don't know how many. How many people are going to be there? I've heard talk of up to 500,000, 500,000. Will it be that many? Will it be more? I don't know. We'll see what happens tomorrow. But what I am concerned with Well, I'm excited by, all the trucks that have gone down. I was out on the overpass in my little town of 12,000-ish, 12, 13,000 people. And there were 40, 50 people on the overpass waving Canadian flags, the mandatory F Trudeau sign, big banner saying end the mandates or mandate freedom. And I support all that. And it was wonderful. There were some great videos going out. You're seeing, Canadians lining the sides of, not every highway is like the 401. Some of them are 2-lane highways going through places like, I don't know, Medicine Hat, Saskatchewan, Brandon, Manitoba, Sudbury. People out lining the roads, showing their support, waving Canadian flags. Stirs you up. It makes you feel good. And now, of course, a large number of trucks, a large number of people are in Ottawa. There are all kinds of videos being shared by people on Facebook Live and Instagram. So you can see that it's certainly a big event that's going on. A lot of horn honking, a lot of screaming and yelling, freedom. Wonderful, nice, everything so far that I've seen, everything looks peaceful, which is incredibly important because it has to be a peaceful protest. But my fear is about how the media is going to frame it. Where are they going to aim their cameras? And I've already seen on Twitter, someone showed a picture of a truck that was apparently in downtown Ottawa, and it was a pickup truck, and flying out the back of the tailgate was one Canadian flag and a Confederate flag. And that's not kosher in my books. The Confederate flag is a racist symbol. I'm an individual. I believe in freedom of expression. And freedom of expression means, in my world, that each individual is free to express themselves as long as they're not being violent, as long as they're not advocating violence, that people should be free to express themselves. And symbols are for, as George Carlin once famously said, symbols are for the symbol-minded. It's a piece of fabric with some colors on it. I wish that whoever this individual is flying this flag, I wish they'd throw it away. It is just viewed by too many people, and including myself, as a racist symbol. It was the flag that the southern states flew under, that they fought under during the U.S. Civil War. And the South, of course, everyone knows, it wasn't about economics. Some apologists will try to say, well, the Civil War wasn't really about slavery, it was about economics. So yeah, sure, it was about economics. You guys didn't want to pay the help. And so it's, in my books, it's a racist symbol. And I wish someone wouldn't fly it. But with that being said, at this point, there has to be, probably close to 100,000 people who have come into Ottawa. And I talked about this in my last video, is there going to be a racist element within all those people? Of course. I made the point in my last video about our Prime Minister Al Jolson, Mr. Blackface, Mr. denigrating our natives. When a protester came to a function with the Laurier Club and had to pay something like $1,500 just to attend, and this individual, native from a Northern Ontario reserve, was there to confront Trudeau over the fact that her reserve did not have clean drinking water because there was an old abandoned pulp and paper mill leaching mercury into the water supply, which causes all kinds of health problems and, probably death as well. So she was there to confront Trudeau because he had committed 4 or 5 years earlier that he was going to do something about it, and he'd done nothing. What a shock. And so when she confronted him, immediately his handlers, his security detail went and they got a hold of her, manhandled her, and started escorting her out of the room he was talking. And as she's being taken away and she's trying to, get her words out, she's trying to address him and saying, you committed to addressing this problem. And he just mockingly looks in her direction and said, "Thank you for your donation. Thank you for your $1,500. Now screw off." You know, Trudeau, I've got no use for the man. That's obvious. He's a poser. You know, he's all style and no substance. That's my take. And so I'm going off track, but bringing it back. You know, within any group, there are regrettable people. Are all liberals racist because we have a Liberal Party leader who likes to wear blackface and denigrates Native Canadians? No. A lot of liberals are very good people who are not racist and who don't denigrate our Native protesters. Fortunately, Trudeau isn't one of those. He's the minority. And within this protest with tens of thousands of people, no doubt there are going to be some regrettable individuals. But Pierre Poilievre was questioned either today or yesterday on the steps going into a government building, and he was asked about fringe elements attaching themselves to the convoy. And he said, you know, when there's a left-wing protest going on, the liberal media doesn't pour through the names of everyone in attendance looking for anyone they can use to disparage the entire group with. You know, if there is an individual who says things or does things that are objectionable, that person should be dealt with as an individual and should be held responsible as an individual, not as part of the greater group. So the protests are a positive thing, but the way the media frames it is going to drive a lot of public opinion. A lot of people are casual observers. They're just going to click on the evening news and watch the CBC and see what they have to say. And I already saw one CBC interview that was being shared around. And I don't wish to be unkind. The woman being interviewed was, you know, very, very simple-minded. Her biggest concern was that her biggest complaint was that her Facebook account had been deleted. This has to end. And this is who they give the mic to. This is who they, you know, I don't consider myself the most erudite person on the face of the planet Earth. I think I'm reasonably well-spoken. I think I choose my words well. But I'm also, I think I'm the last person a CBC, CTV Global News would want to interview because I don't fit the stereotype that they're trying to portray. They will pick a woman like the one who's upset about her Facebook account getting deleted. That will go out on the evening news, and then people casually watching the news will go, oh, so this is what these people are? And unfortunately, that's the way our world operates, because people don't have the time to invest or the interest in investing. They just want to know what to think. And you turn on the mainstream media and they will tell you what to think. They will tell you what is the good and proper thing to think, so that when you're out with your friends or when you're at work the next day, you can appear as if you're informed and enlightened because you watched last night's CBC news conference or newscast. And it's depressing. There's another aspect that worries me, and that is the potential for fringe. What they were asking Pierre Poilievre about fringe elements. I'm not so much worried about them trying to attach themselves to the movement. What I'm worried about them doing is engaging in activities, because the cameras, you know, invariably the cameras will be on them. And will they engage in activities? Will they try and incite violence? Everyone's brought up January, I think it's January 6th, what happened when Trump had a rally. And after the rally, a number of individuals stormed the U.S. Capitol and managed to get inside this incredibly secure facility. Personally, I think a lot of it was, I think the term is cocked up. I think they wanted them in because then it allowed them to frame the narrative in that way. And I'm worried about the same type of activity taking place in Ottawa. I'm worried about individuals trying to incite others, and mobs are scary things. And it's one of the reasons I did. Part of me wants to be in Ottawa, part of me does not, because mobs are scary. Mobs are frightening entities. They're brainless. They talk about a mob mentality. And if you get people stop thinking, and it can be, things can go south. And when you have that many people there, getting away from a negative situation could be problematic. So I'm praying with everything I have that this goes well, that the media acts responsibly, although I don't have a lot of hope there. I'm going to mention way back, I think it was in April or May of 2020, I was watching coverage out of Lansing, Michigan. That's the state capital of Michigan, Lansing, where they have their state legislature. And a number of people came out to protest the lockdown measures that were in place back then. There were individuals losing everything. They were losing their businesses, their homes, their life savings. They were being destroyed. And remember, the United States doesn't have the same social safety net that we have in Canada. And so it was devastating. And in Lansing, Michigan, there were my spitball guests looking at all the videos I looked at, and a lot of individuals who posted their cell phone coverage looked to me to be 2,000-3,000 people who had descended on the Capitol. And some of them, they actually got into the rotunda. I think was a large antechamber. And they were chanting. I forget the chants exactly. It doesn't matter. And for the most part, they just looked like an ordinary, average slice of Michigan society, of the population of Michigan. That was social media posting. That was cell phone coverage from individuals who were there. When the media covered it, what I saw were they focused in on 10 or 12 individuals who were dressed in army fatigues, balaclavas, touting AK-47 knockoff assault rifles, and that was where the cameras aimed, so that when the casual observer of the evening news tuned in, they went, "Oh, it's those kind of people protesting. Oh, I don't want anything to do with them." And it delegitimizes a legitimate protest. This has been going on. This has gone on for ages. This is nothing new. You can go back to the Vietnam era, and the protesters who protested against the war in Vietnam, which Americans have been told it was a vital and absolutely necessary war because if Vietnam fell to communism, that the dominoes would start falling, and Singapore, Malaysia, the entire Southeast Asia would flip over to communism, and communism was the big bad boogeyman. So send your sons. Back then, it was the U.S. military was all men in combat positions anyway. So it was send your young men to die because this is an imperative. And the individuals came out against it, but they were always framed as being a fringe, a regrettable element. The government agents would infiltrate peaceful movements, and they would try and incite them to violence. They wanted to portray anyone opposed to the Vietnam War as being an extremist radical. And they were largely successful. The tide started to turn in 1969 with another major event, and I've made this comment before and others have too, Woodstock. Woodstock was a seminal event that helped turn the tide. It started the tide turning on sentiment toward the Vietnam War. Now, that was 1969. I think it was August. The Vietnam War didn't end until 1975. That's when they finally completely withdrew from Vietnam. So, if for those who are hoping that this will be the end to the mandates, I think realize this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. We have this agenda is huge. It's not just health. Our privately owned businesses are being absolutely decimated. Costco, Walmart, Amazon, the tobacco industry. These are all essential industries. When it comes to the hair salon, esthetician, small retail, dance studio, gym, small privately owned business, no, that's not essential. And so it's wiping out the entrepreneurial sector, the small business owner. It's just destroying them, this agenda. Amazon in Toronto had, at one point, it was reported in the National Post, over 500 active cases in the 3 Toronto airport area fulfillment centers. Never closed. Never closed. But a restaurant, a gym, a dance studio, with nary a single reported case, was forced to be closed for months on end. This is why the protest is taking place. I brought it up last time, my last video. Do you believe in freedom of choice? If a business wants to close, that's their right. If they want to stay open, I believe that should be their right as well. And then customers should have the right to decide whether this is a free market economy. This is a democratic society. But we're moving away from that. And I'll bring up one final point. And I think it was yesterday or the day before, was a day that commemorated the Holocaust. What happened in Nazi Germany. And there's a tendency to say, well, I've seen some posts going out on social media showing a brandished arm displaying the tattoos that people in Auschwitz or Dachau or one of the concentration camps, one of the extermination camps would have. And they say, this is what a loss of freedom looks like. And what people I believe that they fail to recognize is the fact that the so-called Nazi final solution did not start until 1941, 8 years after the Nazis came into power. Nazis came into power in 1933. Shortly after coming into power, I think they were elected in January of 1933, a minority parliament situation. They called it the Reichstag. It was a minority situation. The Bismarck named Hitler as chancellor. He was one of the larger minority parties, and with arm twisting from the corporate sector and the aristocracy, he appointed Hitler as the chancellor, which is the equivalent of prime minister. And then very shortly thereafter, there was a massive fire at the Reichstag. I think the fire happened within weeks in the month of February. Massive fire at the Reichstag. You could see the flames from miles away. And the narrative was framed was that the German Republic, the Reich, was under attack. And so they brought in what were called enabling acts, and it enabled them to remove people's constitutional rights and freedoms. And they just kept pulling them back and pulling them back, 1933, 1934, and people just kept giving over their rights, giving over their rights. There's a night that was referred to as Kristallnacht, which is the night of broken glass. And I believe that happened in November of 1939, 6 years after the Nazis had come to power. It was a slow, grinding process. And the Germans should have stood up in 1934, 35, 36. Within 2 or 3 years, they should have stood up, but they didn't. They just kept saying, well, we'll give a little more, we'll give a little more, we'll give a little more. And the overreach just kept happening and happening and happening. And then the next thing you know, you have World War II. At what point are we now? History does repeat. History absolutely repeats. And the goal of the Nazis was genocide on the one hand and world domination on the other. I'm going to leave it there. So in terms of the Ottawa protest, I pray everything goes as well, perfectly. I'm going to hope against hope that the media will act in a responsible manner and won't seek out the most regrettable people and give them the spotlight when there are some very well-spoken, educated, articulate individuals who can give great. I'm getting some views. Tyson, stop the mandate, medical freedom, government health care. Yes, please. I'm not going to disagree with you. Stop the mandates, medical freedom, freedom of choice. If someone wants, I'm not going to, that's their choice. Likewise, though, if someone says no, no means no. Bodily autonomy. After World War II, the world signed on to something called the Nuremberg Code, which means that you are not to force or coerce people into a medical treatment they do not want. If they want it, fine. But if someone doesn't want it, you don't say, well, are you going to feed your family or are you going to do what we want you to do? That's coercion. Anyway, I'll leave it with that. Just under 30 minutes. God bless everyone. And stay safe in Ottawa and stay strong. And I'll probably do one in another couple days and unpack what actually happened. I know.